Welcome to Learn Knitting Now. I'm Callista, and today I'm going to be talking with you a little bit about the two different kind of main types of heels when you are knitting socks. When you're planning a pair of socks, there are a few different decisions you have to make before you get started, and the type of heel you want to do will be one of them. There are a lot of different ways to knit a heel of a sock. But I think they fall into two main categories. One is a heel flap and one is an afterthought heel. And so I'm going to show you both of them and tell you a little bit about the difference between the two. So I have these two pairs of socks that I've knitted. This one has been a little bit more well-loved already. But this pair was knitted with an afterthought heel. This pair was knitted with a heel flap heel, and they're going to look very similar when they're done, with a few little differences, and it's going to be hard for me to hold these and show you. But the main gist of how this is done, this is the afterthought heel, is you will knit either toe down or toe up or top down, and just in a tube, one long continuous tube. At this point right here, so your tube will look something like this. And at this point right here, you will, as you're knitting, I usually do top down. Some people prefer bottom up, which is fine. But for this particular sock, start at the top, come down. As we're knitting our long tube, I would put the stitches that are going to become the heel on a piece of waste yarn, and then I continued all the way down the sock, and then afterwards, afterthought, I will come back, take the waste yarn out, put those live stitches on knitting needles, and then knit the heel. In contrast, with a heel flap, these turned out so great because the heels and the toes are different colors, so it's a lot easier to see. I didn't even know I was going to do that. Genius. Okay, anyway. Again, we start at the top, we start knitting this tube. At this point, we ignore the stitches over here and we knit only these stitches down, back and forth, not in the round anymore. We're just knitting back and forth on the needles for about this far. And then we will work some short rows to start getting that curve for the heel. And then we pick up along the side because now we have a long-ish piece of knitting that we just went back and forth, so it's flat. And then we will pick up the stitches along the side, and then as we continue to knit in the round, we will have more stitches now, because you see how this part is thicker than this part, or wider, I guess. So then we're decreasing until we get back to the same number of stitches that we had up here, finish the foot, and then the toe. There are pros and cons to each type. What I like about the afterthought heel is if you're knitting stripes, you don't end up messing up the stripe pattern. Actually, the socks that I have on now, we'll do a little. So you see how the stripe pattern keeps going? Like all of these stripes are pretty close to the same width as we're going along. If I had stopped and done the heel at that point, we would have like this weird longer stripes as we were coming down this way until we got back to the same number of stitches. Oh, fun sticker. Joys of having little kids around. Finding stickers everywhere. And so for striped socks, I particularly like the afterthought heel so that the stripe pattern continues in your nice good way that you had it, and you don't have any kind of weird striping. And that's kind of what happened here. This is you can see how the yarn is kind of striped, and that's how I wanted it. If you're having, this is more speckled than striped, and so it didn't really matter quite so much if I had you know, that other little part there. So different heels lend themselves to different types of yarn a little bit better. So that's a consideration to have. I like the heel flap. It does seem to fit my foot just a little bit better because my foot is a little bit bigger in this area. So having that little bit bigger, it's called a gusset, different heel part there, is a little bit helpful. Although I do love these too. It really isn't, for me anyway, it isn't that big of a deal as far as fit. So another thing I like about the Afterthought heels is you just get to knit round and round and round and round and round. It's like good mindless knitting. I don't have to remember, you know, or I don't have to kind of stop and do that other part for the heel. It's just kind of nicer, and then we go back and do the heel later. Downfall for me anyway for this is a lot of times they sit and sit and sit waiting for heels, and that I not never obviously, but that I don't get to for a while, and so they just kind of sit there mockingly looking at me like, when are you gonna finish me? Whereas the heel flap, you do it as you go. So different reasons, different knitters have different preferences. I think they're both fine. And I did learn how to do this more recently, so I have fewer pairs of socks with the Afterthought heels, but I do really like them. There also can be sometimes an issue with the Afterthought heels having a little hole kind of right here where you're picking it up. There are some techniques to lessen that. So so there you have it. I am actually just starting right now working on class for socks. I am going to do the heel flap first, I think. And then depending on if anyone wants me to or how well it's received, I may go ahead and do a Afterthought heel class as well. So be looking for sock class coming soon to Learn Knitting Now.